Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second in the ACIA's masterclasses around tools that you've already got on your desktop. And today's session is around Excel Excellence. Now, those of you who read the small print of the event itself, or who have seen the PowerPoint because you were an early arrival, you will see that the focus of this particular Excel session is more about dealing with your Excel spreadsheets and data sets themselves rather than doing anything fancy like pivot tables or formulae, because we've only got just under an hour, and trying to fit all that into a 1 hour session will probably blow your mind. However, we are in discussions about adding an extra one for those of you who'd like a bit more confidence around this sort of functions and pivot table type world. Okay, so what we're going to do, as the session says, is we're going to cover basically navigating around your data, controlling what your tabs and your columns and your rows and your cells are doing, a few tips around sorting and filtering, finding and replacing content, the basics of conditional formatting, hopefully enough to get you confident enough to go off and play with it yourself. And if time allows, a quick introduction to effective charting, a little magic trick about swapping your rows and data columns if you've never seen transpose before. This is often the one where people realise they're spending a load of time doing stuff they didn't need to do. And going through as well, I will mention some useful keyboard shortcuts. Post this demonstration, when it's published on the Knowledge Hub, there will be a PDF of sort of top tips and shortcut keys from this session. Anybody who cannot access a Knowledge Hub because they're not law enforcement is welcome to drop me an email. And I do believe that we're probably going to publish them as a collection through the ACIA as well when the set of masterclasses is over. Okay, folks, so you should all be able to see my Excel spreadsheet, and what I have done, those of you who saw the Word masterclass a couple of weeks ago knows I'm a terrible geek, and I foisted a load of science fiction references onto you. And for today's session, I'm going to do the same thing basically, because so I didn't have to mess about sanitizing my data, I have created a brand new data set all around a sci-fi police force. So this is my star crime Excel spreadsheet. Okay, so unsurprisingly, everything is fictional and can be easily shared. Okay, right, so at present then, we're on the home tab of Excel. Nowadays, we don't need to explain what the ribbon is or anything like that. I will mention that I'm going to try to refer to things properly. So for example, on this home tab, all of these little sections with their names are the groups, and then within the different groups, you get the collections of cells. So I'm going to try and cross-reference so that it helps you when you watch the video back. Okay, we're not going to be touching the formula tab because we're not doing formulae. The majority of what we're going to look at is probably going to be on the home and the view tab for today's sessions. So if you sort of see something that you want to look back at later on, check out on your Excel on your home and your view tab. Now, just out of interest, some of you might not be aware, but you can actually make a bit more space on your worksheet, because if you're on any of your tabs, and this is 365 version of Excel, but there's always a version of it, this functionality if you've got an older version. If you hit whatever you find at the right hand side, now in this 365 we've got this ribbon display options, this little arrow, I can tell it, for example, to just show the tabs, and everything just like gives you a bit more space. You can still work with those tabs, because whenever you hit one of them, you can then use whichever tool you want. When you go back into the workspace, it's gone again. Okay, I've had colleagues who basically use all their Office packages like this and don't bat an eyelid. I have my suspicions that's probably because they didn't realise that they were switched off. If you want them back, that's easily dealt with. You choose a tab, doesn't matter which, and back over to the right hand side. In this version, I just say always show the ribbon. In an older version, it might just say you know, bring it back, so pin it in place. Okay, so that was literally just a little bit of space making. Okay, I will say actually at this point that When it comes to using Excel, and to be fair, any Office package, right click is always your friend because you always get this context specific menu. That's its fancy name. And basically, it'll look at your content and what's going on so far on that page, or in our case, in this cell. And it tries to sort of like second guess with what you might be wanting to do. So you'd be surprised how often a quick right click will help. If you're going to go into more complex Excel work, which I'm sure as predominantly analysts you will in the future, or you already are now, I have found that both Google and YouTube and Copilot are my friends. Take them all with a pinch of salt, obviously, till you've tested it. And I'll give you one tip from my experience of using Copilot for guidance with formulae, which is that somebody has obviously taught it proper English. I'm doing speech marks, obviously you can't see me, proper English. And it knows that commas have spaces after them. So if you're going to ask Copilot for a formula, when you've asked it for whatever you want, say to it, please remove all the spaces after the commas, because it just puts them in as a matter of course. It was very weird the first time I saw that. Okay, right, enough top tips. Let's have a look then at some functionality. Now, obviously you can't see me pressing keys, so I'm going to describe what I'm doing if I'm using some shortcut keys. We're going to start off on this star crimes worksheet. Okay, so it looks typically just like any other sort of crime data you would have. You've got your crimes and your categories and when the crime happened and what the outcome was and who's the officer and the districts that took place, obviously nice spacey ones and all sorts of flags and stuff like that. Okay, so first thing, let's get around this database because it is quite full. Okay, now you can do it two different ways with your keys. One way you can do it, if you have a look at the keyboard that you might be working on, somewhere, normally to the top right somewhere, you will see a key called the End key, and you've probably never hit it before unless you know this tip. If you hit End, and then you look down in what's called your status bar down here, you'll see it now says End mode, and that's waiting for me to hit one of my directional arrows. So on my keyboard, I'm going to hit down, and you'll notice that it jumps basically down to the bottom. And if I hit End again, it's back in End mode, as you'll see, and then if I hit the Up key, it's back to the top. And unsurprisingly, as you would expect, it will also go right, and it will also go left. Now, if I do Control and those arrows, down, up, right, left. Sorry if I'm making you a bit dizzy, folks. That has the same effect. So it swings and roundabouts. You do need to bear in mind, however, that when you're doing the End option, okay, it is affected by gaps because basically what it's doing is looking for the break. Now, obviously, if you've got a nice full set of data, the break's going to be at the bottom. But if I move us slightly over here on this scroll bar to where I've got H and I've got a missing item here, just for proof of the pudding, I'll hit End, I'll do my down, and it'll stop at the gap. I mean, I can force the issue now. I've gone past, and now I can get to the bottom. Okay, it's just to make you aware. Okay, so quick way of getting up and down. Now, if I pop myself somewhere right over to the far right, so I'll do a control and arrow in that direction. So we're over here where the storm log is. We've got Web Storm in West Yorkshire. If I hit the home key, which you'll find somewhere nearby your End key, and hit that, it will take you back to the beginning of the row that you are in. Okay, and it doesn't care about the blanks. So, and we sort of like half joke about this last time I delivered this session. If you're using Vodafone data, which seems to get wider every time it's sent to you in the comms data world, if you want to get back to the beginning of the row, you've just gone all the way to the right hand side, just hit a home and you're back at the beginning. Now, if you do a control and home, so I'll pop myself just somewhere over here so you can see, if you do a control and home, you're back to cell A1. And if you're right in the middle of your data, I couldn't tell you how many times I press Control and Home. I think many of you may know that Control and A will select everything you've got. Yep, just press my escape. I don't need to be on that anymore. And then you've also got, if you want to select a particular set of data, obviously Control and A worked anyway, but sometimes I like to hold down Control and Shift at the same time. I press my down arrow, I don't let go, and I press my right arrow, and that also selects everything you've got going down and going across. So that's just a few tool tips. I will also mention, and again, sorry if I'm going to make you a little bit dizzy, I'll just do a quick Control and Home for the practice. You can also, if you hold down your Control key and use your mouse wheel, that will zoom you in and out. Okay, so you don't need to worry about using your zoom slider or your view. You can just use your mouse wheel and zoom in and out. So that is basically a collection of shortcut keys. Now, I'm going to actually mention a couple of others because, so down at the bottom, as we know, we've got all our different worksheet tabs. Okay, I've got 5 on this one. You'll notice that some of them are actually coloured as well, and sometimes folks don't realise that you can actually colour code your tabs. Obviously, most people know you can change their names, but if you right click on any one of them, you'll see there's actually a tab color option here. So what color should I change this to? I can't remember what I decided to do. Red. There we go. Right. It's also, you'll find now when you're actually on the particular tab, it stays pastel-y, but when you move off onto another one, it then gets its full color. And it's actually quite clever enough to know that it might be a bit hard to read with black writing. So it's actually, because it's a dark one, it's actually turned it. So unless you've got hundreds and hundreds of different tabs, that can be quite effective. Also, I mean, I've only got 5, yeah, but if I had hundreds and hundreds of tabs and I actually had to sort of like 2-way arrows in work in progress, yes, you could just go, yeah, I'll go here and I'll go here and I'll click on the arrows and it'll keep me going forwards. If you right mouse click on these 2-way arrows, yeah, you'll see that it lists all the different tabs that you might have, and you can literally jump to the one you need. Okay, so it's not that hard when I've only got 5, but it could be if I had 50. Okay, also, so I'm at star 4 stats now. If I hold my control key and then I press page down and page up, so it's page up for this direction, yeah, you see it's moving its way along. So again, if you know where you want to go, you can do your control keys for that as well. That was a recent addition to my control key collection that I learned. Okay. Also, I think probably most of you know, even if it's just because you're doing it accidentally, you can pick these things up and let go and put them in a different order. Says me, completely missing. Okay, so I've just changed the order of that one. What you can also do, if you've got your data somewhere where you know where it is, but you'd rather nobody else break it, you can do this. You can right click and you can hide that data set. Okay, so I know Star Crimes is there. If I send it to anybody else, they currently don't. Now, if they're a wise Excel like you and they're nosy, they might do a right click anywhere, and then you'll see an unhide, and it will tell you the options for things you can unhide. So there's lots of other ways you can protect your content, so they still can't break it. But if they can't see it, you know, out of sight, out of mind, I shall unhide that because I will need it later. Okay, right. Bear with me, folks. Just turning my script page because although I know a lot of this, try to remember the order it's coming needs a script. Okay, right. A few tips about your content and freezing your panes. Again, I'm sure many of you will know most of this, but we'll just cover it for completeness. So I'm going to move to the View menu. So firstly, if I scroll, I use lose my headers, and if I scroll to the right, I'd quite like to create these crime numbers, and I lose those. So your opportunities to freeze your panes, now bearing in mind that it all depends on your screen compression and stuff. I've discovered, for example, that my show options have now all sort of like condensed themselves into one location, which is quite annoying. So it might not look exactly the same on yours, but the functionality will be there. But I'm particularly interested in this window group here, and I've got this freeze panes. Now underneath this freeze panes, I've got 3 options. Literally freeze the top row, does what it says on the box, and now that top row is staying, thank you very much. Or I can switch it to instead freeze first column, and the top row now disappears, but the column stays put. That's all very quick, and as well, that lovely phrase, quick and dirty, isn't it? If you're just in a hurry and you just want to freeze something, you can just use those. Now, to be fair, I'd like to combine those, so I'm going to unfreeze my panes, and the way I like to think about it is, what is the first thing that's allowed to move? So as far as I'm concerned, I'm keeping these, I'm keeping those. So blockade running, that first entry there is the first thing that's allowed to disappear in one direction or the other. So I click in there and I tell it to freeze my panes at that point. And now I get to keep what I need. But for example, if you're an analyst who works in the comms world and say this was actually somebody's phone number and these were all the attributions of who those phone numbers are highly likely to be, then what you could do is you could keep those 2 things and you could unfreeze your panes and instead just decide that this is the first thing that's allowed to move. And then if I go to the left, you'll see we keep those 2. So never feel you're obliged to just keep that one. Okay, I'm just going to unfreeze all those for now. Okay, so what you've also got then in this show group, which I'm going to have to extend, you've got a few options where you can just basically change what your screen's looking like. So firstly, you can turn off your formula bar. Yeah, if you're not going to be using it at all and you're basically happy to just type in cells. And turn it back on. Also, if you are going to be using it, you can actually make it, it says me not making it work. There we go. You can make it a bit bigger as well if you want, just by that little arrow that's beside it. Okay, so you can turn on and off your formula bar. You can also, bearing in mind that the grid lines that you first get, unless you say to it print the grid lines, they are literally for visual guidance, and then you have to put borders on. But if you want to know what it's going to look at on an actual piece of paper, you can turn your grid lines off completely and see that. So you can turn those off. You can also, so these are the headings, which are your letters and your numbers. You can turn those off completely as well. I just think it makes it look a bit like it's broken because you're so used to seeing them. But the reason I do that is if I'm doing, for example, a court exhibit for communications data, and most commonly you label each line, don't you say line 1, line 2, line 3? I find there's nothing more confusing that my line 1 after the titles is row 2 in my Excel, and my line 2 is row 3. So I turn them off while I'm preparing my exhibit so I don't get my columns mixed up. Okay, you can turn off these data type icons as well. And this is an interesting addition in 365, which is the focus cell. So we all know that we've got the active cell border, but you can actually, if it helps you see these things, you can turn on a focus cell. Depends what you're doing. I can imagine it could get quite annoying, but it could also be very useful for accessibility. So I am going to turn it off for the rest of the presentation, but there you go. Might even have some, you can even change its color. There we go. Lovely. Right, and let's get rid of that. Thank you very much. Okay. Right, so we've moved about a bit, and we've demonstrated that we can turn some things off and make a bit more space on our screen. Now what I'm going to show you then is using a particular column, which is this one here, the outcomes column. Oh, gone are the days when it just used to stay detected or undetected. It does make me feel old. Now there's like 18 different versions. But we're going to use this column to demonstrate some column and row options. Okay, so I think most people will know that you can basically just pick up a column edge or column border, however you want to call it, and you can drag to resize to the size you want. And I think most people will also know that if it's not quite the size you want, if you double click on the divider to the right hand side when you get that two-way arrow, I do appreciate mine are larger than you will normally see. I've made everything a bit bigger so you can see what's going on. If you double click, it will auto fit it. Just to mention as well, because it depends what you're doing, but you might be recording yourself a bit of an auto macro or something like that. If you right click, you'll always get the context specific, don't forget. So I can have a column width there. You do have to sort of like know what width you want, says Helen, guessing that wasn't quite wide enough. But if you want to fix your widths, that's an ideal way of doing it. You know, work out what your width is and insist. And also on the home tab, just for completeness, if you go up to here in the cells group, you've also got format here and both the columns and the rows. I don't propose to demonstrate all of them. It gives you the idea, but you've got the auto fit and the row. And just for completeness again, it's not going to really have much of an effect unless I sort of make something a little bit narrower. So let's make a few things a little bit narrower just by the dragging. Okay, so if you've got this sort of situation, if you select all your columns and then just randomly double click on one of the dividers, everything will widen to its auto fit. Okay, be aware of what your original data is though, because some of our data sets in West Yorkshire, if we did that, we'd end up with a massive wide column for the MO, and getting at anything else would involve a lot of maximizing and increasing and decreasing size to actually access it. Okay, so what I will do is I will just shrink this slightly. Okay, now as you can see here, charged is going behind the content of G. Okay. And that is because this content is not wrapped. The way I like to describe it is basically imagine a pack of cards and you lay them on a table and then you spread them out so that the one that's touching the table is on the bottom and you sort of fan them out. That's what I like to think about Excel cells. Yeah, that one is on top of that one as a card and that one's on top of that one. Okay. So one way you can easily tell if it's not wrapped, if there's no content like this one, yeah, it carries on again until it gets to some content, if you see what I mean. Okay, so wrapping, dead easy. in the first instance because you've got it on this alignment group in the home. Yeah, so I can just hit that cell and just say wrap that text. Okay, now because I kept it that width, it's not auto fitting the width. Sometimes it will. Obviously, I can't deal with that at the moment, so I will just do it up here just for that demonstration and practice. Auto fit the column width. There we go. So you've got an option up there to do the wrapping. Alternatively, just to show you that it also lives where format cell's gone, there we go. It also lives in the alignment group and the same ticky box is there. It's already telling me that that is wrapped. So obviously you don't have to do it cell at a time. And then finally, for completeness in terms of the concepts about the wrapping, I did have a colleague, an inspector once, who was basically tearing her hair out because if I wanted to break this into 2 paragraphs, this sentence here, investigation complete, no suspect identified. If I click after the word complete, where I probably want the line break, and press return, it just moves down a cell. And I know many of you will know this, but sometimes this is a revelation. If you hold on your Alt key and then press enter, now I've got 2 paragraphs. And if I just extend that a little bit wider, and I'll just move identified down to the next line as well, just for the proof of the pudding. So an Alt and Enter in your cell will force a carriage return. And now you can all put proper paragraphs into your Excel spreadsheets. Okay. I will just mention as well, we're doing a good job of breaking this spreadsheet, but everybody knows in the alignment group about the left, centre and right align, don't we? Because we get that in Word and everything else anyway. This section here is about basically where it comes in on your cell. So if I started, might type in a slightly shorter cell, shall we? Right, so if I start typing in a cell and then wrap the text, and then just make it a little bit wider. There we go. Can you see how at the moment that is basically filling up from the center? Most people, when they first get their Excel, it will start filling up from the bottom. I aren't a fan of that. I am a fan of filling up from the top. But it does mean a practical upshot is that if you say center and center, yeah, you get dead center of your cells. So if you're creating something almost like for something that's going to be a graphic and a document, you're preparing Excel first, you can align things really, really neat without having them dead center. Okay. I will mention merge. So for example, I could merge these 2 titles here in this alignment group, and there's a merge and center. It always warns you that what it will do is it will only keep what it describes as the top left, because you could merge a range of cells. I could try and merge all of these together if I wanted to, and it would only keep that sentence nominal ID. Some functionality will still work if you merge cells. Some may well break. I don't have a list of which is which immediately to hand, but I would say use them sparingly. And I would also suggest as well, there's no reason not to, but often I see that people who are creating a spreadsheet will tend to sort of say, well, I'm going to have a nice title. So, oops, I didn't mean to press delete, I meant to press insert there. So I'm going to have a nice title. So I think what I'll do is I'll have my title here and I'll start my spreadsheet there. Just put in the headers. Yeah, you don't really need it, unless you're doing an app. You don't really need to have your title up here and waste your first 2 rows. But I'll admit that's just personal opinion. But it's my webinar. Okay, folks. Borders and shading, that all lives anyway. We all know about the home group for borders and shading. So you get the little option here, but don't forget any of these little arrows that you see here, these bring up the full functionality. So if I don't feel like just doing it from this border area, I can pull up that full functionality, and I've got my borders, and do I just want it on the text, or do I want it on the column, whatever. I've got the fills, and that's what you find to protection as well. So you've also got that option to do your borders and shading. Okay, so if you've never filled in a coloured cell before, you now can. Right. Lovely. Right, I'm just going to demonstrate a couple of tools together. So it will be familiar to those of you who saw the Word webinar, but this really does actually sort of like make my point, which is that this tool is cross-package. Okay. Firstly, though, I'm going to demonstrate Format Painter. So the place where Format Painter always lives is in a clipboard group, and it's this little paintbrush here. So for example, if I change this text blockade running here, I can go and I can use my group and I can say, fine, let's make it bold and italic and underline and bright yellow and with red writing, and doesn't that look dreadful? But I might think that's the best formatting since sliced bread. Now, one option I've got is obviously to pick the next thing and do exactly the same thing again, but that's just a complete waste of my time. What I can do is I choose the formatting that I like, this cell, and I hit the format painter box. And what I get then is a paintbrush that follows me around until I pick a cell or selection of cells. I've totally broken this spreadsheet now, so let's do a selection of cells and they'll all take that formatting. Okay, now if I want to be a bit piecemeal, sort of the equivalent of control selection, what I do again is I pick whichever's got the nice formatting that I like. I double click my format painter, and then anything I click on until such time as I press escape, yeah, will take that format. So that does exist in Word and it does exist in PowerPoint as well. Really, really handy bit of kit. If you were to push me, it's my favorite tool in Microsoft. Right, okay. So moving on from that then, I just want to mention this up here. So most of the time, if you've never used your quick access toolbar, all you'll see, well, if you're in Office 365 like we are nowadays with our force, you'll see the auto save, because most of your stuff will probably be on some sort of like cloud formatting, yeah. But so that's why I've got that. But most of the time, what you will see is you'll definitely see save and you'll see undo and redo. And if you open Word or PowerPoint, you basically get the same thing. Maybe a start the PowerPoint button, okay. But this is your own personal toolbar for whichever package you're using. So this is my personal Excel toolbar. Now I already have something in here because I didn't want to delete it and lose it. I've got basically a little bit of a comms data menu in there. But you can add stuff that you want to always be able to find, so you don't have to go looking through the ribbon. What you do, firstly, if you hit the little drop down arrow beside it, you get the sort of like frequently used tools options. So for example, here's print, preview and print. So no more faffing about going into file or into page layout to see what it's going to look like. There it is. It's now on my toolbar. It's as simple as that. And if you keep accidentally hitting save when you didn't mean to, you can turn save off. I think we'll put that back, feel comfortable. Okay. Notice that at the moment, whatever I choose is sticking itself at the right-hand side of this list. Now, you might not want one of these 10 to 12 tools. So underneath, what you'll see is you've got a more commands option. And it says customize quick access toolbar. And we all get a little bit wary when you hear the word customize and you think, oh, I'm allowed to do that. You're definitely allowed to do this, okay? So you hit more commands and it opens up. Basically what it's done is it's gone backstage to open the Excel options. So if you ever press file on these packages and you go to the background where if you do it on Outlook, you can set you're out of Office, and if you do it in Excel, you can get all your options. That's what it's done, but it's then jumped straight to quick access toolbar. Okay, so what it shows you on the left-hand side is it shows you at the moment we're in popular commands here, and you get an alphabetical list of things that are nearly as popular as the first list. And on the right-hand side, you get a visual representation, left to right is top to bottom, of what's in your quick access toolbar. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, that's interesting, maybe I just have to pick it up now. Okay, I've got a bug, which is very unusual. Oh, no, I haven't. There we go. See, operator error. Can you see I've got a little arrow? That's what I was wondering, where'd they gone? I can now move that up and put it back where it was. So it's completely sortable. So if you've got two images that often you confuse them, you can separate them. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I've never seen it with a scroll bar before, first time for everything, probably to do in my Zoom level. So I'm going to go for Format Painter in this alphabetical list because it's a popular tool, and we're going to add it in. Okay, and there we go. I've now got Format Painter in my toolbar as well. And just for one more, just to show you, because there are, if I go into more commands, there's popular commands, but you've also got, if anybody's got any macros, you can run those from the toolbar, like the one I just mentioned that I've got. All commands, because there's all sorts of things in there that you don't immediately find on the ribbon, and the ones that aren't on the ribbon. So I'll just mention very, very briefly, there's a thing called auto format. Okay, it's not on the ribbon, and it's only, again, going to that phrase, a bit of a quick and dirty option. But now I've got it. Let's move over to an area that's not been completely wrecked by me. Yeah. Now I've got it. I can select a database or data set. I can select that auto format, and it's got built-in formatting. So if you're in a hurry, I always demonstrate this with the blue one because I just quite like it. Yeah, you can just select the colourful one and you're away. It's done all that formatting for you. If all I wanted was the colourfulness and nothing else, like I don't want my text formatting or anything like that, I can go back into it, and in this options, I can say, right, don't mess with the numbers or the borders or the fonts or the alignment. And you can see it's all dynamically changing, all the width and the height. Just give me the patterns. Then I find colourful one. It's going to look dreadful, folks, I know, because it doesn't work very well when you've got rid of the formatting of the font, but I get it. And, if there's something there that's a starter for 10 and you can then tweak, saves you a little bit of time. I am very interested, however, because those of you with sharp eyes will have seen that that particular option, if you keep all the options on, has a dark blue left-hand side. Yeah. Now, did not like that. You will notice that I do not have a dark blue left-hand side. And it appears to be that the bug that's been running through Excel since I've been using auto format is still running in 365. So that is interesting. But it just demonstrates that extra tool. Brilliant. So even if you learn nothing else today, you all now know that you can have a toolbar of your own tools. Okay. And obviously, if you decide you don't want them anymore, just pop back into more commands and remove anything that's cluttering up the world. There we go. Lovely. Right. So now I have completely trashed this data set. I'm going to move to Starforce. Starforce. There we go. Right, so in my world of sci-fi policing, these are my police officers. And of course, this is the year 2144, so they're not just human, we've also got androids. So I'm just going to give you a quick demonstration of your sorting options. So your data sorting is all under the data tab. Okay, and you do have the very basic options, which I'm sure most of you know, where you can do lowest to highest and highest to lowest. Yeah, so if you do a particular sort of sorting, you might get that message that just wants to double check. So I think if I just say sort these, it might do that. It might ask me if I want to extend. Oh, it didn't, you see. It doesn't particularly feature in here, but it is a point that it will warn you if it looks like you're going to break something off. I expected it to say that to me, but there we go. You live and learn. Now, what if I want to do something a bit more detailed? Okay, so I'm going to select my data. I'm going to do a Control A, I think, so it definitely knows what my data is. Not necessarily always the case you need to do that. I'm going to say I want to sort it. And what you get is the sorting functionality. And what I can do, for example, then, is I can say to, okay, well, I want to sort by status first, because that's going to tell me who's an android and who's a police officer, because maybe I need a particular status of police officer for this job. So I am going to sort by status. Okay, and then I also want to know who's which rank. So after I get all my androids and all my humans, I also then want to know, okay, so who's what rank? Okay, so I've put those two together, and now what I should do is I should get all my androids. Okay, there they all are. And then I should get all my humans, and it has also sorted them by inspector, then officer. Obviously, it's alphabetical, so it would be reverse, and then sergeant, and then there we go. We've got the officers and the sergeants, etc. Yeah. So you can sort by more than one field at a time using that functionality. And just one more. So this time I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to delete that level. I'll keep my rank, but I'm going to add a level of deployment because I need to know who's where. Okay, and I want that to be first, so I will move that up with this arrow. So now we're going to see where they work, then who's what rank. Maybe I need to find like a European inspector. Yeah, whoops. So another keyboard just fell off my desk. Don't worry, I have stacked keyboards. And then I'm going to have one more level, which is going to be my status. And I don't like where that came in. I'm going to move it in a minute, but I'm going to reverse it. So I could do a Z to A. And if obviously if you had something numerical, you would be able to reverse it numerically as well. So now I should get where they are, and then who they are by rank, and then what they are. And there we go. So on Alpha Centauri, I've got a couple of human inspectors and then a couple of android inspectors and so on. And then on Alpha Centauri, those are my police officers and then some human sergeants. You get the idea. Okay, so it's just to show you how you can sort on more than one thing. Right, just checking my time. Really, 11:36 already? Goodness gracious me. Okay, Renegade Bollos. So, how to use filters. I think most people know how to use these, how to use filters, but just for completeness again, you select either the column you want or all of them. I tend to be an all or nothing person. It's in your data tab and you just turn them on. So if you've known how to work them but never knew how they were switched on, that's how you do it. Okay. What they do is they basically read down the column that they switched on for. They identify unique things. They can manage with a few thousand. You'll soon realize that they can't because it'll tell you there's too many. And then you can use the filters, as I'm sure most of you know how to do, to pull out just the ones that you want, or all of them. You can also clear the filter one at a time. Okay, now if you want to turn them off, obviously you can do them one at a time, or you can just press the button again and they'll all go away again. So that's quite user friendly, and obviously it will switch them off. If you've got one turned on, let's do Adama and Ahmed. You'll know they're turned on, one, because the icon changes ever so slightly, but two, because you've got the blue row label. So they're the obvious, to be fair, the blueness is probably easier to spot than that. I've cleared that filter. What you can also do, though, if I decide that, for example, and I'll use my format painter, this person and this person and this officer and Avon, who is my favourite Blake 7 person, who I don't seem to be able to select, probably because he's dead, and Chen, if I think they're all the important ones, what you can also do nowadays is do a quick Control and Home. I can press Escape to get out of my format painter, and I can filter by colour. Yeah, you can also sort by colour. Once you've sorted it once, yeah, what you have to do is then basically select the rest and pick another colour and sort by that. So it's not quite that clever that you can sort all the yellows, then all the blues. You have to do it, but you can definitely sort by one colour so that you get them all at the top if you'd rather do that than a filter. And often that one sneaks by. Okay. If for any weird reason it seems to behave itself quite well in modern Excel, but if for any reason your filters aren't working properly, my recommendation is if you do your Control A and then turn your filters on, it will include the blanks in its search downwards. Otherwise, sometimes what you might have found is, for example, this particular filter might have stopped at sort of like nitrogen breather because there's no more. Yeah, so do a Control A, then turn your filters on, and that should hopefully sort that out for you. Okay. I will just mention as well, I'll just get rid of those formattings, I think, just because they're a little bit distracting. What you can also do, if you've never done this before, it's not that was me hitting the wrong button, and I'm going to turn the filters off, back to the data tab, turn those off. What you could do, if you like, is basically be in your data, and if you do an insert and do an insert tables and tell it to be a table, what that will do is it will check it's the right data set, which I know it is. It checks you've got headers, and then it turns it into a table. So it's got all sorts of functionality. For example, you can add more stuff into the table very, very easily. It's already given your filters, and just like any sort of object, like a chart or a pivot table, or in this case, a table, you get an extra menu at the top as well. So there's all sorts of things you can do. I'm not actually, no, I'm a bit wary of doing that because I do have a lot of duplicates. Maybe if I did it in one column, yeah, I can. No, it's going to make it do in the other. But you can do things like remove duplicates, insert slicer, yeah, where I can actually say, well, I want some buttons now, where I can do for warnings. Yeah, so if I say I want to insert a slicer for a warning, I get a little set of buttons. These are all editable. Yeah, but now I'm going to say, right, in that case, I just want the Jedi Masters. Turn off the blanks. There we go. And the telepaths. There you go. So I've just got the Jedi Masters. So for somebody who's not that confident with using the filters, they could always like have a button that they can press. Okay, and you can also do the basic things like you don't have to have a blue table, you can have a green table. So sometimes inserting a table and using the filters there could be quite useful. Brilliant. Okay, Right. Let me just have a look, see where I am. So I've gone back to my star force again. I'm just going to show you some tips on Find. So Find lives over here. It's the magnifying glass. It lives in the editing group. Okay. And the straightforward Find is easy enough. You can either just select it from there. A Control F will have the same effect. There we go. Find. What do I want to find? If you do a Control F, you also do get the opportunity to change it to just the replace as well. So straightforward Find. If I'm looking for Officer 0908, typically he's not there. Oh, that's because that's not a 0. Operator error. I think I was going to say it was there last time I did this. There we go. And how lovely is that? It'll even give you, I think that's really useful because it actually gives you the focus cell as well. Okay, so that's as easy as you can find. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look in Star Crimes for Officer 0908. We won't worry about what's going on over there in the mess, okay? But I'm interested in 0908 because I want to know what his workload's like, yeah? So what I could do here then is, again, I could do a find, okay? But what I'm going to do is say find all, and it's found them all for me. It's highlighting the first one, but can you see here? It's telling me which ones I've got. Yeah, so I can move to them, and it's telling me that 0908's got 7 items in here. Okay. Right, and then just to show you replace and how strong that is. Right, so again, I'm going to do a find, but this time I'm going to select replace, or I do a Control F and select replace. Now, I'm not going to look for 0908 on this occasion. I'm going to look for quantum. Okay, but I want to replace it with dilithium. Getting very geeky now. Okay, across the workbook. Now, I could just hit replace all and it literally would do it. I also have some options that I can open up because at the moment, if I replace quantum by dilithium, it would do it everywhere. Yeah, in this sheet, but I can actually tell it to do it everywhere in the workbook. I was talking to an officer about this yesterday. Yeah, if you want to just switch it everywhere in the workbook, you can change it, or you can narrow it down a bit, and you can make it case specific as well. And it's not just the words you can replace. I can actually say, well, actually make it dilithium in a bright yellow version, which will hopefully just show you. Just spot here, you've got smuggling quantum crystals. Yeah, hopefully that will become a yellow smuggling dilithium crystals if I spelt quantum correctly. We'll do a replace on in this sheet. 122 replacements. That's how easy it is to sort of like change your formatting if you need to. Okay. Right. Oh, we might just fit this in, folks. So Star Crime Stats. Firstly, I just wanted to make you aware of this status bar. You know, where we were looking earlier on and we could see that we were ready for stuff, yeah? If I select these stats here, this is basically crime figures, isn't it? Yeah. But if I select these stats here, if you look in the status bar at the bottom, if you see, it's already told me that I've got an average of 48, a count of 108, and the whole thing adds up to 5,241. Bad crime stats, folks. If you right click in your status bar, you get a bit like we did with the quick access menu, things that you can show or turn off. Now, whenever I use our training laptops, I always turn on caps lock because I don't get a little light on our training laptops. And there's even more. Now, I haven't got all the mathematical ones turned here. So if I turn all these ones on as well, okay, and then come out, now I get the average, how many there are altogether, how many are actually numbers. So I would assume that if I go in here and break this data set by putting a letter in there, I will have now 1 fewer. Yeah, so that did work beautifully. And all the other data. So sometimes if you just need to know, you don't actually have to do any stats. You can just use the status bar. Okay, so a beginner's guide to conditional formatting. So conditional formatting will live on your home tab, pretty much central because it's one of the most powerful sort of like Excel tools. But it's got so much built in that you don't necessarily have to do much more than basically tweak what it's already got. So for example, I'm going to select this data set. When I select conditional formatting, it has a variety of options, and the first one you see, it says highlight cell rules. So conditional formatting is basically all about rules. You set the rules, or you use the rules, or you tweak the rules. Okay, so if I hover over that, you can see that I've got things like greater than, less than, between, equal to, text that contains. That's brilliant. Imagine if you downloaded a bunch of crime data and you were looking for every MO that said knife and to get it to turn that cell red. You can easily do that. You can also get it to identify duplicate values. I'll do that very quickly out of interest. Okay, and you'll see that it says, right, you're going to do a duplicate, and you take this default formatting if you don't do anything else. Yeah, not the best way of identifying duplicates because you've still got a lot to do with it. Yeah, but it is there. It's definitely this data set anyway, not useful. So for example, then I'm going to select a greater than. I think basically what it does in the first instance is it works its way about halfway through your maximum and your minimum. Yeah, looking at the maximum, it's 99, so that sort of makes about sense. But you can change it to whatever you like. So anything that's bigger than 77, and I am not going to take this default. What I'm going to do, these are all the default ones. They're a bit naff if you ask me. So I'm going to go customize format, and then you get all your options that you normally do. So I'm going to say, right, fine, fill it in red, make the writing bold so I can see what's going on. And there we go. So there's all my ones that are higher than 77. Okay, I will show you now. I said it's rules. So because I've set one, if I go and have a look at the bottom of conditional formatting in manage rules, at the moment it's showing me the current selection because I didn't have anything selected. So I tell me what's going on in this worksheet. And it says, right, well, you've got a rule here, apply to these cells, and it's saying that's going to be the format if it's greater than 77. I could go into there and I could change it to whatever I liked. I don't know. That's about 85, so we'd have a few fewer. Yeah, and that should be a dynamic change. There we go. Did you see a few disappear in the background? So I don't propose to go through all the different options. You get the idea. You can change them as you like. Okay. You can also apply things like this, which I think are quite fun. You've got data bars. For example, they would look like that. Yeah, they are also dynamic with the width of your column. You've also got color scales. Be conscious of the color schemes. You can turn them both on at the same time, which looks absolutely awful. We discovered that yesterday, so I'm going to turn my data bars off. But if I want to remove formatting, now I've completely messed that up. If it's just on this column, what I can do is I can select this particular column and I can say to it, right, show me the rules. Firstly, if I just want to delete a couple, or I can, for either my data set, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong button there. I can say clear rules, and I can say clear rules from the selected cells, and that will get rid of everything. But don't forget, by doing that, I've also lost my greater than 77. Yeah. Format Painter will paste your conditional formats. So to get myself back in the room, I'm going to double click on one of the conditional formats that's worked, and I'm just going to apply it here. And and it did not do it. Oh no, we went to 85, didn't we? If I change that to 86, there we go. So you can get back in the room. If you ever want to completely nuke your formatting, if you go up to your editing tool, there is a clear all, which is obviously clear everything, and there's clear formats. But if I do that to this, every formatting will go. And the last thing really to show you about conditional formatting, if you're in the rules world, yeah, is, can you see it here says stop if true? So if you've got something that might change twice because of the formula that you're giving it, and you can have as many as you like, as long as you can figure out what's going on, then you can tell it to stop if this one's worked. Yeah. So if I was going to say go red if you're over 85 and go blue if you're over 90, but then I suddenly realized, well, actually on these cells I don't want it to do that, I could click a stop if true. So that's just to give you the idea. Okay, and then one quick demo of like how you could use it with a formula. So this is pretty much the only time formula appears here. But if I pop to Renegade Bollows, okay, where we've been before, I'm going to turn all these filters off by putting all these back on. I've forgotten I'd left it like that. There we go. Okay, and I'm actually going to clear all filtering from this table so I get my data back. Clear formats, lovely. Right, so I'm going to delete that as well, I think, if it'll let me. Lovely. Right, now what I actually want to do, if you notice how, because I deleted all formatting, my dates of birth, are now showing as numbers of days since the 1st of January 1990. So I'm just going to put those dates back to something that actually makes sense. Number, date, fell for that one, didn't I? Hook, line, sinker. Right, so I've got these dates of birth. Am I in the right? Bear with me a second, folks. So we just check. Renegade Bollows. Yeah, just show Bollows. Date of birth. Oh, silly girl. Right, I'm going to use my format painter because what I want to know is when their bollo was issued, not how old they are. There we go. Been a long week. Okay, folks. So imagine that these bollos are issued, and I wanted to know if they've been particularly overdue. Okay, so what I can do is I can select the data. Okay, so I'll select nearly all of it. Okay, but maybe not the last one. Okay, you'll see why in a minute. When I do my conditional formatting and I say I'm going to do a new rule, I'm going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. Okay, so don't worry too much about what this formula is, but basically what I'm going to say is if the bollo was issued before May 2144, that's a pretty old bollo and maybe we should be doing something about it, yeah? So I don't have to worry about all the references. I just have to put one cell reference in and it will dynamically do it for the rest. So say, right, so if the cell E2, which was my first date, okay, is less than, I'll just move my cursor so I can see what's going on, right, is less than the date. It's amazing when people watching you type, you cannot type. And we are in 2144 and it's May the 1st. So there's something you might have never seen before. And I am going to change it to a fill of purple with bold text because, in fact, with white text, because I don't get to do purple enough on these things. So there we are. Right. So if I type my formula right, then anything before May the 1st, 2144 should go purple and we should get our fingers out. And there you go. So that's just an example of how you can use it. Now I go, oh, bother, I forgot that one. I forgot 201, E201. So I can just pop back into conditional formatting, into my manage rules, and I can just go over here and change the range and pop in E201 as well. Apply that. And just for the proof of pudding, I bet that is before May, isn't it? Let's have a look, see if it should be before or after. Yeah. And if I make that 1st of April 2144, it should go purple. There we go. Conditional formatting in 10 minutes, folks. Right. In the 2 minutes I've got left, I'm going to mention this then. So I'm going to go to star 4 stats. Okay. So again, a bit more simple now. It's about who we got and where they work. Okay. Any data set that you have got, and that includes pivot tables. Take my word for it, I am hitting the function button. If you hit F11, you will get an instant chart. Okay, so basically Excel will look at what you've got and then it will give you a recommended chart. Okay, now we don't have time to do full chart formatting, but don't forget, like I said, I'm clicking out and I lose those menus. I click back in and I get the extra tabs. One's just all about making sure your chart looks right. I do love these built-in default settings. I do love a table under my data. All sorts of different color schemes you can pick, what you need to add, etc., etc. So I'll let you explore those. A very useful thing is up here, though, where you can switch the row and column round. So I've got people on the bottom and locations at the top, and very quickly with a switch, you can now get the locations at the top. The select data one is if you select the data, you notice my totals were coming in, so I can quickly turn off the grand totals of my chart. Okay, there we go. And then one last thing to mention is if I decide that purple is the wrong purple, there's no such thing as a wrong purple. But if I click on the data representation once, it selects them all. If I click on one again, I can now just change that one. So if you've ever just wanted to make one of them a different color, and then you just use the same old formatting options as you have in the past from wherever you get your formatting from. Okay. Now, one last thing to mention is imagine that I wanted to take this table and copy and paste it. Okay, if I copy and paste this table, and I'm just going to open up, bear with me, folks, just see yourself flash by very, very briefly while I open this Word document. Right, if I just paste now, yeah, it has basically turned it into an editable table, which is fine, but a bit faffy, and if you send it off to anybody, they could break it. My recommendation is you consider, if you don't need to have it editable, you do this. So when you select it and you do your copy, You tell it to copy as a picture, and then you tell it, I normally say as shown when printed, because if I say as shown on screen, I'm going to get the grid lines, yeah? So I say, give me it as it's going to look like when I print it out. Once I hit OK, I then go to wherever I'm going to paste it, and I basically just get a graphic, just like, obviously it's got no grid lines because I put no borders on it. So I can move it about and do whatever I want and resize it and squeeze it in or whatever, but what I cannot do is edit it. So if you want to break the link between your Excel and wherever else you're taking it, why not copy it and paste it as a picture? Okay. And I did promise you that before we finished, and yeah, we obviously do hang around. I'll be hanging around for questions. But what you can also do, I've got Alpha Centauri, Betelgeuse, etc. here, and I have the types of people here. Imagine if you wanted that the other way around, and okay, I could embark on typing that out, and you'd get very bored. But what I can do is I can select this. Now, those of you out there who are analysts, if you've never used paste special values, yeah, get someone to show you quickly. But I'm pretty sure you all know about paste special values, but what you can also do with paste special is this. So I copy it, I make sure I'm going to put it somewhere where it's got space. And then when I go into paste special values, I don't do values, I do paste special itself. So I can get the window open. And can you see here, you've got an option which is transpose. And I just select that. And lo and behold, I've got a table the other way around. So that is your last minute time saver for this demonstration. Okay, folks, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to stop the recording, because also I'm sure people don't want their questions being recorded. So the recording is now